He died.
He
So
died.
did Rockefeller.
Yeah, everybody dies. You can't take it with you, right? Come into this world broke and you leave us broke. Okay, so Prabhupada said, it's very difficult to meet a big person, even of this world, what to speak of God's. But if you happen to see Mr. Ford walking his dog in the park, and you go up to Mr. Ford's dog, and you give him a 2-cent lozenge. I happen to have a 2-cent lozenge, courtesy of Prabhu. And if you give the dog a 2-cent lozenge, little candy, the big man will think, Mr. Ford will think, oh, he must love me because he loves my dog. If you love me, love my dog, we say in America. Man's best friend. So it's very difficult to please God, or approach God directly, but it's very easy to please me. I'm Krishna's representative. And so a devotee who was sitting right about there said, how can we please you, Srila Prabhupada? Chant Hare Krishna. And so immediately, devotees started chanting Hare Krishna, and it was a big kirtan, we call kirtan, or what you were doing just before. And then Prabhupada, he knew this was his cue to get off the throne, bow down to Krishna, and leave while there was a big kirtan. And so he left in a little yellow Volkswagen, and then leaving us to sing Hare Krishna, and then the kirtan ended, and then we had been fasting in honor of Prabhupada's birthday, and then on the big stage there was this big cake, birthday cake for Prabhupada. So what did we do? We'd been fasting, we were hungry, so we all charged the cake. Me too, I charged the cake, and I went, and I took a corner of the cake, because that's where all the icing had gathered. And I tucked it under my arm and I ran like a football player, you know. We say football, you think we call it soccer, but you call it football. Anyway, I ran like an American football player, and I was dodging these people who wanted some of the cake I got. But they tackled me, and we rolled down the hill, and I came out on the bottom, and the cake was on the bottom of me. So the cake was powder. Oh, sorry. Baby likes happy endings. Well, there is a happy ending, actually. Okay. So, this scenario was being enacted all over the hillside. People were grabbing cake, other people were chasing it for the cake and rolling down the hill. And the evening news was catching it all, you know. Because Prabhupada had just given a beautiful speech, making the Guru understandable and accessible to the American mind. And now we, as disciples, were giving the purport of the speech. Eat the cake. So I'm sure they didn't understand anything of what they were witnessing. Meanwhile, back at the ashram, Prabhupada said to his assistant, so there is some cake. So, Nanda Kumar, he goes back to, this is about a half hour later now, right? So he goes back to the hillside festival site, not a smudge or crumb of cake left. It had been totally devoured. So Nanda Kumar gets back in the Volks, drives back to the ashram, and said, Srila Prabhupada, the devotees ate your cake. That's all right. Bake another one. So maybe the evening news and the scholars and the politicians didn't understand this, but Prabhupada understood us. He knew we were out of control. He was very tolerant of us. Yes, it was a privilege to be in the Hare Krishna movement back in the day, but you know, it was wild because we were all wild. We were fresh from sex, drugs, and rock and roll, trying to be devotees of God. So that was 72, and that was in September 2nd, Saturday. And then, 2 and 7 is 9. So on September 8th, Friday, Prabhupada was flying into Dallas, Texas, and I happened at this. I was following. I decided to follow Prabhupada. So we went down in a big bus down to Dallas in time for Prabhupada to come down there. And so Prabhupada flew. You've heard of Dallas, Texas? Big, anyway, big cowboy town still. It's where President Kennedy was assassinated. So Prabhupada flew into Love Field. It was called Love Field. And he got off the plane, and without any preliminaries, Prabhupada was ushered into a VIP room for a big press conference. Dallas Morning News, the biggest newspaper in the Southwest U.S., was there. And so Prabhupada hopped up onto this dais, like a makeshift Vyasasana, and without any preliminaries, you know what Prabhupada said? So there are 3 ways to fly. Prabhupada had just flown into Dallas on American Airlines, which is the hub of Dallas is the hub of American Airlines. So he said there are 3 ways to fly. And the reporter for the Dallas Morning News, she was standing right next to me, and she had her pen out, and she was all ready for Prabhupada, you know. And Prabhupada said, mantra, pigeon, and machine. So I looked over, and sure enough, she was writing mantra, pigeon, machine. And Prabhupada said, formerly, yogis knew the art of vibrating spiritual sound formulas called mantras, and because they were in touch with the Supreme Being, who's not only aloof, far, far from this creation, but he's in every atom and between every atom of the creation. Aloof, but all-pervading, inconceivably. So yogis know the art of contacting that super soul, it's called a Paramatma, so they can access any point in space by the grace of the super soul. So they know the art of vibrating the mantra, and then they can dip in, for example, they can dip in the Ganges at its source and then come out hundreds of kilometers downstream into Allahabad. They know how to appear there. Mantra, you can travel by mantra, spiritual sound formula, can transport you. And then Prabhupada said, and then there's pigeon. Now, don't think of the pigeons you see, you know, where there are droppings all over the city, and don't think that. There's a Sanskrit word, kapota, in the Bhagavatam. It means a certain species of bird, and they're trained to carry humans, and they go in formation, just like the person I was named after, Brahma, he rides on a swan. Okay, so kapota birds, they can carry humans. Not anymore on Earth. You don't see it on Earth anymore in this Iron Age. But we have pictures in our books of these birds carrying people around, right? Like a magic carpet, right? Something like that. And then Prabhupada said, and then there is a machine. So this lady next to me, she raised her pen, and she said, were these ways to fly, you described, more efficient than our 747 jumbo jets? Oh yes, Prabhupada said. Oh yes. For one thing, there were no, and Prabhupada hesitated, he leaned over to a devotee, he said, how do you say that? Jack highs? And the person said, hijacks, Prabhupada, hijacks. There were no, yes, there were no hijacks. Because the hijacking had just started. The first skyjacking. It was some guy from the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, and just skyjacked a plane and was trying to fly to some other place for political asylum. There were no hijacks. So then the lady was not about to be outdone or shut down, or bested by the Swami. So she said, well, Swami, if you know all these ways to fly, why didn't you fly American Airlines today? She thought she had it, right? But Prabhupada, he knew how to answer everybody, you know. So without missing a beat, Prabhupada said, to be one with you. And this lady, she turns to me and she says, you know, I like that man. crazy questions, perfect answers. Prabhupada knew how to answer people's mentalities. So that was in Dallas. And then, let's see. Many things happened actually at that Dallas event. But I think I'm going to skip to... I didn't see Prabhupada in 73. But I saw him in 1974 because Prabhupada, he came for the first time to Chicago. Heavy city. Anybody been to Chicago? Yeah. A lot of Indian people there. Chicago and Toronto are the biggest now. Heavy city, because that's where the slaughterhouses first started congregating. Oh boy, heavy vibes, heavy modes. So Prabhupada came there for the first time in 1974 because he wanted to attend the Hare Krishna parade we call Rath Yatra. Usually Krishna is, you see the deity forms on the altars, but then he comes out on a parade to meet the people once a year. It's called Jagannath, the Lord of the Universe, from which the English word juggernaut, this unstoppable force, is derived. The British, that was their pronunciation of Jagannath. When the British were occupying India for 200 years, they went to Puri in Orissa, where the original parade is, 50-foot carts and a million people, on the street. And there's big carts coming down. Egad, it's the juggernaut! So it passed into the language, Jagannath, as juggernaut. It means some big, unstoppable force, you can't stop it. Just like, I hate to say this, folks, Donald Trump has become our juggernaut in America. Oh my God. Believe it or not. God save us. So Prabhupada came to Chicago for the Rath Yatra and to initiate many more devotees. And he arrived at about 6 in the morning, and then he got to the temple about 7. And about 7 in the morning, it was time for what we call Guru Puja. We have this ceremony in the morning where we honor Prabhupada with a special song, sing song and dance. And so Prabhupada came, and so there he was. So he just got right up on the seat, and we all started having Guru Puja. Now Prabhupada taught us to dance in a very kind of sedate, ladies and gentlemen way. The Swami step, it's kind of side to side. But by 74, devotees had started going to India and started observing the wild dancing in Bengal, oftentimes wild dancing. So we incorporated that into our own. We were from the counterculture, we were from the rock and roll protest culture. And so when Prabhupada was receiving his ceremony, he was observing us dancing. We were singing the words to the song, but then he saw us how we were dancing. We were kind of like doing the boogaloo and the shing-a-ling and the African twist, and we were working out, And Prabhupada, he just raised his hand like this, and he went, That was Prabhupada's power. The place went from, total transcendental pandemonium to, pin drop silence in a nanosecond. And we were all kind of like, frozen and looking at Prabhupada. So what does Prabhupada do? He gestures behind us to this big painting, with, like you see the deities of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, like this. They're exhorting us to dance, sing and dance. Sacred sound, that's the way home in this age. So Prabhupada gestures to the painting and he says, dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. And then he lifts his finger, and then we're back. Woo! We're animated again. But we're chastened, so we're dancing like ladies and gentlemen, and we're not just doing rock and roll stuff. So that's the power of the pure devotee of God. He can command, not demand, but command by his own personal example. And then when the parade happened later in the day, I was lucky enough to ride on the same cart. There's 3 carts in this parade. So there's Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. Prabhupada always rode in the middle cart, the protected Subhadra Maharani cart. So he was there, and then I was with a couple of young students, brahmacharis, up on the top, and we were pitching packets of peanuts and raisins prasadam, mercy of Krishna, to the throngs below on State Street. And we were having a lot of fun, just throwing these packets of prasadam to the people on the sidewalks and cheering their catches, and So it was like a sport, right? Meanwhile, everybody's chanting Hare Krishna down below, and then something occurred to me while I was pitching the peanuts and raisins to the throngs. I thought, wow, Prabhupada's in Chicago. And Chicago was the city in 1893 where the first Swami came from India to the West. Yeah, we don't like to say his name. But because it was the first attempt at, what do they call it, interfaith. They had something called the World Parliament of Religions. And these people invited representatives from all the different spiritual traditions, and so to represent so-called Hinduism, they invited this famous Swami of today to come. So, but what did he preach? He preached something that infuriated all the Western clerics. He was preaching that we're all God. What is all this talk of God, said the Swami. I see so many gods before me loitering in the street. Even the bum on the street is God. Daridra Narayan, it's called in Sanskrit. So that was the first impression Western clerics had of Vedic religion, preaching that we're all God. We're still kind of recovering from that. So I wonder what Prabhupada's going to say when he gets to the end of the parade, when he starts addressing the public. Sure enough, the carts pulled into the civic center. A microphone was run up to Prabhupada's cart. He grabbed the microphone, he took the mic, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming to our Radha Yatra festival. In the Vedanta Sutra, it is said, Janma Yasya Yataha, the absolute truth is that from whom everything emanates. The absolute truth is a person, not something impersonal or void. Not simply a black hole or a big bang or a cloud of crud or a primordial soup or a, what is it? How do you say that word? Prokaryote yolk. Something dead. Prokaryotes, how do you pronounce that? I don't know, from biology. Prokaryotes. So Prabhupada was there to set the record straight. That the absolute truth is a person, and ultimately the absolute truth is all attractive, and that is what Krishna means. All attractive. And that's why we sing Hare Krishna. Hare is an address to his energy, and Krishna means all attractive. So that was July 74, and then the next time, I'm going to tell one more time, because I'm going to save the rest till the next Sunday, because I'm here 2 Sundays and then I go. So the next time was, this was in, you've heard of Miami, Florida? You heard of that? Okay. It's a little, Florida is this little dog leg, this little peninsula that sticks out in the southeast corner of the U.S. And so Prabhupada was coming from Venezuela, Caracas, up to Florida, up to Miami, which is in the southern tip of Florida. And I was having a hard time, I have to confess. I was having a hard time, because my service was distributing Srila Prabhupada's books. But I knew after 5 years in the Hare Krishna movement, that my true calling was not distributing the books, it was working on the books, because Prabhupada was still producing the books. And so I wanted to work at his BBT, his Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. I wanted to be part of the team. But I knew that they wouldn't let me go, because I was pretty good at distributing books and collecting donations. Yeah, so anyway, there was a conflict in my head, you know. What should I do? Anyway, so I was disturbed. My temple president knew it. So he said to me, "Hey, Suresvara," we were in Miami, "would you like to go on a morning walk with Srila Prabhupada?" Because I'd only seen Prabhupada in big, public gatherings, big public. So morning walks were a little more intimate. So I said, yeah. So I went on the morning walk. First time, really close physically to Prabhupada. I thought that's what it was all about, becoming in with the in crowd, right? Being close to Prabhupada physically. Krishna had a little something in mind to teach me a lesson. So it was kind of a cloudy, cool morning. It was February 1975, and Miami's usually pretty warm, but it was kind of cool that morning. Sometimes it gets cool. And it was misty, and where we were walking on the beach, the Atlantic Ocean was to our right, and then the sand was to our left. But where we were walking was kind of steep. The sand was so there was only room to walk a little bit between the steep sand and the ocean. And so we were following Prabhupada's single file. And there were a lot of science-minded devotees on the walk, because Prabhupada had just recently formed the Bhaktivedanta Institute to show that Krishna consciousness has a scientific basis and to combat things like the myth of Darwinism. So we were walking behind Prabhupada, and somebody would call out a question from behind, and then Prabhupada would stop, he'd put his cane in the sand, and he'd turn around to answer. So in the kind of jockeying for position that was going on, at one point, when Prabhupada stopped to answer a question, I stopped right in back of his head. Right? And this is what I always wanted, I thought, right? To be really close to Prabhupada. So I stopped, I was like this far from Srila Prabhupada, from his body. And unfortunately, that's all I could think of. I didn't hear the question. I didn't hear Prabhupada's answer. All I could think of was, wow, I'm right in back of Prabhupada's head. Jagat Guru, spiritual master of the universe. I'm right in back of his head. And I was just looking at the hairs on his head, where his shikha, where his little tonsure, and it had traveled down kind of from the male pattern baldness, to the back of his head, and a few silver hairs, and his golden brown Bengali skin. That's all I could think of, that I was like a kid, at a rock and roll concert, being close to the idol. So, while I was thinking like that, Bhajan wants you to hear this. I got a real heart transmission. I got a clear message in the heart. It wasn't a voice in the sky. It wasn't skywriting. It was simply Hriday. It was in the heart. And the message was, yes, you are right in back, as Srila Prabhupada said, but you know what, my friend? You are unlimited light years away from Srila Prabhupada, because you are in Maya, you are in illusion. You're thinking Prabhupada is his body, and the way to be close to him is to be close to his body. So I was mortified. I was totally mortified. Oh my God, here I am, right next to Prabhupada physically, but I'm nowhere near him. Nowhere near him. And then, in the next instant, I became so happy, because I realized it's true. To be close to Prabhupada, you don't have to be in with the in crowd. You simply have to be living in the love and the light of his instructions. Be close to him by following him. And then you can be close. And that was kind of my inoculation against him leaving this world, which he did almost 3 years later. And that was devastating, but I remembered, yes, you have to follow Srila Prabhupada. So, when I'm teaching this seminar, that's a big message that to be close to Prabhupada, you just have to follow his instructions and you'll be close. So if you'd like to hear more about Srila Prabhupada and his pastimes and his, it was a privilege to be there when he was walking among us on the earth. But it's only the beginning. It's only the start. And we all have equal opportunity, equal access to be close to Prabhupada and to have Krishna consciousness by following him, by following his example, his life, his teachings, his mood and his mission. So now that the deities are open, Prabhupada would like us to sing and dance Hare Krishna. Dance like Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Yeah. I'll try not to boogie. Okay, so we're having these lessons at 6 o'clock, Monday through Saturday. It'll be lessons 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So please come if you can. It's a lot of fun. It's PowerPoint slides, and I sprinkle in stories in with the points, so it's not dry. Try to make it juicy. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.